you'll see that it's starting up some various services. These plugins actually run in a virtual environment, a Python virtual environment inside a Docker container. So there's a lot of sort of virtualization and abstraction that created some challenges, but we were able to work through those. So let me go ahead and show you what we have here. This main page of the WynGuardium dynamic policy generator, you may recognize from some of the mock-ups, the wireframes that Ramsey showed you. He was also really helpful in coding a lot of the UI that you see here, so shout out. But I'll go ahead and walk through some of the functionality that we have and just kind of show you what our plugin does. I can go ahead and select some pending changes, maybe unselect them, reselect them, and go ahead and approve those. So you can see that moved our pending changes up to the recent changes list. And if I go into the View All Policies page, I can see the list of all the policies we just saw, and then we can also see it's loading some other dynamically generated policies from further back in the history. In a real-world scenario, we would be deployed to a customer's Guardium instance actually in their environment, and we'd have access to their IGC instance. So we had to do some things here just to sort of show in a lab environment how this works. But we can go back to the main page here and we see some of the same information. But really the key part of this is setting up the connection IGC. So that takes place in the configs page here. So I'll go ahead and fill this out with some sample values.
A port number, we can select the authentication type, which for IGC is going to be username and password. And no keying on my password here, but I'll go ahead and save this.
So we can see some feedback here, just letting us know that the connection has been saved. And I mentioned that in addition to the automatic features, we want to be able to do this manually. So we hit Query IGC. That's going to send a request to IGC and display the results here on this page. And we can sort of scan through, see what we have. But let's assume that this first one here, or maybe this second one on the list, is one that we want to generate a policy from. We can select an entry and then have that sent to the Guardium API, which then generates a policy in Guardium. So with that, we can go back home and sort of just see that everything is still working, still running, and really that is going to be the workflow in using our plugin. A lot of the cool stuff happens automatically behind the scenes. That was the way we set it up. But this was to show that there is still a UI there that will allow security engineers to go in and kind of do things on the fly. Okay, one more thing. I do want to mention a sort of a bonus app that we were able to create. We found that Guardium didn't really have a super active developer community. There were some holes in the documentation, a couple errors that kind of tripped us up along the way. So we wanted to leave the developer ecosystem in a better place than where we found it. And if I can just type the URL correctly, what you see here is the Guardium REST API documentation. It was generated from the open API spec that Josh Klon from our team helped us get. And with that, we were able to generate, using Swagger, some interactive API documentation. So I'm not going to go through all these methods. There you can see there's quite a few, but we can basically see all the commands available to someone developing for the Guardium API and kind of look at sample calls in different languages. So for our project, pretty much everything was in Python. Didn't really use any JavaScript. But if you were working for the command line or in other languages, you could go here and basically see an example of how to make these API calls.